Hi guys, this is Dr. Divya Pradhan and we are back again with the second part of evolution of major groups of plants. Alright, we are going on to the next division under plants, and the next division is Pteridophyta. So Pteridophyta, P is silent, okay? So here you're familiar with the ferns. Ferns belong to pteridophytes. And the pteridophytes include ferns, horsetails, and whisk ferns. Even before we go on to pteridophytes, let's look at what was going on before. Before this we had covered what? We had covered division, what? Bryophyta. And Bryophyta, if you remember clearly, these were non-flowering plants. They had no flowers and they were non-flowering. They had root-like structure, leaf-like structure, stem-like structure, no true roots or leaves or stem. All right, so they had, remember, little or no organized vascular tissues, so no stem, leaf or roots. You remember this? And then what was the next point? The next point was no vascular tissue. Vascular tissue are what? The xylem and phloem. This is a P. But like all plants, Bryophyta had alternation of generation. So now we come to pteridophytes. So pteridophytes, remember, like I said, include ferns, horsetails, and whisk ferns. These are, of course, seedless. They don't have seeds, but watch what I'm going to be writing. So they are primitive. They are seedless, but they have vascular tissues. So here you are going to see vascular tissues. What are the vascular tissues? The xylem and the phloem. All right. So here when we say seeds, what do we mean by seeds? Seeds are nothing, but they are the fertilized and the mature ovule. Okay, it contains the embryo. We'll talk about that soon. Let's look at the characteristics of pteridophytes. These are terrestrial. They grow in moist places. They show very big variation in forms. They are like small annual plants, or they can be the big perennial plants. They have roots, leaves, and stem. They have, remember here, no roots, leaves, and stem. Here have roots, they have leaves, and they have true stem. Of course, the plant body is a sporophyte. It is not the dominant plant form in bryophytes, is a gametophyte. Let's not forget that. And of course, the sporophyte is nutritionally independent. The leaves are, of course, very varied. They can be very small leaves, which are microphyllous, or it can be the big leaf, that is the macrophyllous. And finally, the leaves have, of course, the sporangia. We are going to see that in 1 second, okay? All right, so we are going to talk about ferns, which we are very familiar with for division Pteridophyta. And the leaves in this case are the megaphylls. They are big leaves. And these leaves are called fronds. All right, so let's look at the alternation of generation in a fern or in a typical pteridophyte. So we are going to begin with here. So you know, like I said, the sporophyte has true roots, they have leaves, and they have stem. The leaves are called fronds. Here the sporophyte, it's a dominant independent structure. At the lower surface of the leaf, you are going to see a structure called the sorus or the sori. The sorus has flap-like structures, and then it has sporangia. What's a sporangia? Sporangium is a spore-making factory. So in here, in the sporangia, these spore mother cells, they undergo meiosis, which is a reductional division. Remember, it's a sporophyte. That means it's diploid. As soon as you go through meiosis, remember, you'll end up with cells that are N, haploid. So these are the spores. What happens is, as you know in ferns, as these sori mature, they become black. These leaf flap-like structures will open. These sporangia are going to burst, liberate the spores. The spores are wind-blown. Wherever they land, they are going to germinate into a heart-shaped structure. It's not even Valentine. And this is called the thallus or the thalli. Now here the thallus is a heart-shaped structure, and you will have inverted funnel-like structures, the male and the female sex organs. The female is called the archegonia, the male is called the entheridia. The female has the egg, the archegonia has these flagellated sperms. These flagellated sperms need external water. Now you understand why ferns, which are amphibians, they need water for fertilization, for the sexual reproduction. The sperms are going to swim to the egg and fertilize the egg. Remember, sperm is N, egg is N, N and N. When they fertilize, you're going to get a zygote, which is going to be 2N. Haploid, haploid, diploid. As soon as you get the zygote is going to germinate, and it is going to form the young sporophyte. And the young sporophyte is going to grow off the thallus, the gametophyte, which is going to absorb as it grows, and finally it is going to become the sporophyte. This is the life cycle of the fern. The sporophyte is the dominant generation. All right, so now let's look at the next division, gymnosperm. Gymno means naked, sperms. So gymnosperms, basically what they're trying to tell you is that the seeds are naked. They are not covered by a fruit. All right. There are 4 groups: the cycads, the ginkgos, gnetophytes, and the conifers are the gymnosperms. So here, what is the new thing that we see here? Obviously, we see that they have seeds. Okay? So, what does seed contain? The seed contains the young sporophyte. It contains the embryo. It has sporophyte, that's the embryo, stored food, and it has a seed coat, right? The ability of this seed to survive harsh conditions makes it able to live on land, dominant, and it's dominant and live on land completely. There's huge amount of diversity, as we know, but we are going to focus on the conifers, okay, or the pine. So here's the life cycle of the pine. It is more complicated. So the sporophyte, of course, is the dominant generation that you see. Why? Because it is a diploid. Remember, if it's diploid, it's a sporophyte. There are 2 types of cone. Now, remember that last time we had used the word sporangium, or the spore-making factory. Now, replace the word sporangium, which is a small microscopic structure, with a cone, large macroscopic structure. So instead of sporangium, we are going to be using the word cone. All right, so there are 2 types of cone which look different, the seed cone and the pine cone. The seed cone is found near the higher branches. The pine cone are much smaller, and they are on the lower branches, tips of the lower branches. What's happening inside the seed cone? Inside the seed cone, you have, these are called, there's a seed cone scale, and under the seed cone scale you are going to have an ovule. Remember, the ovule has the cell called the megaspore mother cell. The megaspore mother cell right now is a diploid. The megaspore mother cell inside the ovule is going to undergo meiosis, and remember, meiosis is a reductional division, so from 2N you will have N. Only difference is the megaspore mother cell is going to form only 1 egg, all right, or the megaspore. So again, ovule has a megaspore mother cell which is diploid, undergoes meiosis to form an haploid. Only 1 will mature, megaspore will mature into what's called an egg, if you want to call it an egg, Inside the seed cone, we have what is called a pollen sac, and inside each pollen sac you have this microspore mother cell. The microspore mother cell forms meiosis, and each microspore mother cell, look at the difference, is going to form 4 microspores, okay? Megaspore forms how many? 1 egg. Microspore forms how many microspores? 4 microspores. Notice the difference, okay? Quantity, quality. Each microspore now is going to form a pollen grain, which are winged. The pollen grain, of course, is going to be carried by wind and land on the ovule, of course, by the process of pollination. And once it enters, each pollen grain is going to germinate. And it is going to germinate, that means the pollen grain is going to germinate, here it says, it is going to form a male gametophyte, so small, notice, no longer a big structure. So the pollen grain is going to germinate, forming a pollen tube. The pollen tube is going to digest its way slowly, and once there, then what happens is non-flagellated sperms are released from these pollen, and they are going to fertilize the egg that's sitting in there. Once the egg is fertilized, what's going to happen? You are going to have a zygote which is, again, you understand, diploid. Once it forms the zygote is now going to form the start of the sporophyte, yes, because 2N, diploid sporophyte. You please associate diploid with the sporophyte, okay? So here you're going to have an embryo, you're going to have a seed coat, you're going to have a stored food, you're going to have a proper packet, and this proper packet is called seed. This is what gymnosperms makes gymnosperms different from the pteridophytes. So once these seeds, the cones open up, and as these winged seeds are liberated, these winged seeds are going to be carried by wind, of course, or also by animals, and wherever the seed lands is going to germinate and is going to give rise to the sporophyte. So this completes the alternation of generation, gametophyte with the sporophyte. Gametophyte is a very, very small stage. You cannot even detect, you cannot even see it. The gametophyte is a very short part of the life cycle. Of course, microscopic, like I said, cannot see it. The sporophyte is a dominant generation. And I'm going to continue with the final evolution of the angiosperms in the next presentation. So if there are any questions or concerns, please stop by, please call me, please talk to me. I thank you for your time and attention for listening to this video.